Welcome to the Power Hour, Optometry's biggest and longest running show. I'm your host, Eugene Schatzman, and today's episode starts with a number that should get your attention. Over $1,000 in revenue per patient. My guest today is Dr. Patricia Poma. She's owned her practice for more than 20 years. She's built a specialty-driven practice that includes, get this, medical eye care, vision therapy, myopia management, dry eye, aesthetics, specialty contacts, optical supplements, and subscriptions. But this is not an episode about running from thing to thing or buying a machine and moving on to the next shiny specialty. Patricia's approach over the last couple decades has been very, very disciplined, and she talks about it. Build one thing at a time, make it sustainable, train the team, create systems, and then you can move to the next opportunity. And one of the big things in her conversation is this theme of non-doctor-driven revenue that doesn't always require chair time. So Patricia talks about how she builds ambassadors inside the practice, or creating subscription programs, or developing specialty services and finding ways for the practice to keep delivering value, even when she's not the only person delivering that every piece of care. So what I loved about this conversation is that Patricia is direct, she's practical, very clear about the mindset shift that's required. She talks about moving patients into daily disposable contacts, for example, or explaining dry eye in plain language to patients, training the team to carry the conversation forward, and why culture and patient trust are just as important as the service itself. So if you ever wondered how a practice gets to high revenue per patient model, especially given the challenges that are in the marketplace today, this episode should be for you. Before we jump in, quick reminder to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And as always, reach out to me directly at eugeneschatzman.com or through the Power Hour website with feedback, questions, ideas for future episodes, or if you want to explore working together. And now, here's my conversation with Dr. Patricia Poma. Dr. Patricia Poma, welcome to the Power Hour. Excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me here, Eugene.
All right. So I think in order for us to talk about how you get to over $1,000 revenue per patient, I think we need to get just a little bit of background on your practice and kind of how you grew it, or what your journey has been. So let's do just like a little bit of context setting for the audience, and then we'll go into the actual performance.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think that the main thing is we need to realize that this was, and the journey continues, right? It's never a dull moment when you own a private practice, and when you're practicing within a profession that the scope continues to change and develop, which is really exciting. So I'm in Metro Detroit area. I purchased my practice back in 2007. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, the economy was at rock bottom. And back then, that's when the big three in Detroit were all claiming bankruptcy. So it wasn't the best time to purchase a practice. So, purchasing a sinking ship, if you will, because retail wise, no one was buying anything back then, was interesting. So we did start off, just bouncing off the walls here. It started first with just sitting back and analyzing the practice and just looking at what the needs of the patient were, finding out what niches needed to be met. The practice I was with, is thriving. It was doing okay. And it had some vision therapy components to it. But other than that, specialty wise, there wasn't much available in specialties. Back then, optometrists in my state weren't really able to bill medically either, because the ERISA plans discriminated against optometrists. So, my little tangent is, continue to fight the fight for scope, because it matters. So I came in as a new optometrist, hungry, ready to go. And the first thing I implemented was trying to keep the glaucomas and the macular degenerations and the red eyes within the office and fight for getting on insurance panels. So that was my step number one, trying to figure that out. So that was no small feat. It was timing is everything. And I think that's the other thing in the business world is knowing when to jump on board and when there's a fight that can be fought and when you need to just kind of stop and wait. But the door started to creak open with billing medically. And that was step one, was eliminating insurance vision plans slowly and increasing our medical billing.
Yeah. And I think as you start kind of describing this journey, let's just go back for a second and let's start with when you first purchased your practice.
Mm-hmm.
what did you know that you wanted to build a specialty practice? Did you know what business model you wanted to follow? Or did you kind of discover it over time?
I'll be honest, I was just grateful to find a job that was within
Mm,
private practice at that time. I was commuting almost an hour to get to my office because I was not in the area that I grew up in. But just to find, to me at the time, I did not want to work retail. I wanted private practice. I knew I wanted to be my own boss. Um, but at the same time, I did work in my office. I took a gap year between undergrad and graduate school, and so I did have an idea of wanting to do pediatric care, and that vision therapy component was something I was attracted to. And then, within that scope, I did do some rotations with some myopia management. So that was something I also wanted to develop. And mind you, this was about 20 years ago. So we were really at the forefront of myopia management. I know a lot of people are entering that now, but I was, fitting ortho K slowly from the beginning. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So now let's fast forward to what the practice is today. And it sounds to me like, and one of the things that I know you're well known for is, hey, you took a practice that is, it's a retail practice, but it's also you've built a kind of a specialty practice. So explain to the audience, what does that mean? What do we, in your words, what is a specialty practice? And really like the revenue per patient of over $1,000 per patient, which we said in the intro, is definitely a remarkable accomplishment when you look at the rest of the industry. So we're going to talk about how you do that and what you specifically do, but just describe your practice to everyone listening. How many patients do you see per day? What's the vibe like, and also what's the list of services that you even open?
Yeah, and the one thing I want to really, really express is, because is that all of this was done slowly with time, right? What I notice with a lot of the clients with that when I do some consulting is they want to do everything now. So they're purchasing, an IPL while they're hiring a vision therapist, and then they're doing myopia, and then they're doing. So I think that the main thing is, finding one goal at a time, developing it, or finding those that can help you develop, because it's not like you have to do everything yourself, but developing it to the point where it's sustainable on its own, and or referrals come on, where it's just this beautiful beast within itself before you move on to the next project, right? So I feel like as of late, optometrists have ADHD a little bit. So we buy the IPL and we're like, oh wait, that's not working, so we're going to squirrel, I'm going to move on to this now or next, right? So my practice, where we are today, is along the lines of lots of specialties. So we've developed the vision therapy to the next level, where the therapists are trained and know how to um, lesson plan their own patients, and they know when they see a diagnosis what to do with it. We have a dry eye aesthetics practice that encompasses everything from oculift to LLLT to lipoflow to IPL and radio frequency. So we're doing quite a bit. It's not just one little thing, but we have and a nutritional aspect to it, and aesthetics with a whole skincare line and supplements and collagen and all the and subscription programs for that. Um, we also, have doctors in our office that fit sclerals, so specialty lens fittings for patients with irregular corneas. We have a myopia management clinic, if you will, and I call them clinics, but they're just factions or little pods within the practice. But which the myopia management really, really is an adjunct and or supplemental to the vision therapy, right? We already have that patient base, so why not add more to it? Um, now there's more, that's even changing because now there are lenses and spectacles that are involved, so the opportunities to keep adding revenue within that myopia management is there. What am I missing? Macular degeneration and glaucoma, obviously that's still medical, and then contacts and glasses. Like we underestimate, as optometrists, we're always looking at exciting things. And I think we need to keep the excitement within our contact lenses and our glasses also. I think having product that is different, having product, and whether it's lenses, frames, finding niches and needs of patients, whether it's a pediatric patient that can't find good quality frames, or brands that are just different. We're living in this vertical integration in which almost all the retailers have, and I'm not going to mention brands per se, but the same brand. So if you're not a fan of that brand, there are people that are connoisseurs of specific little things and or become connoisseurs because they don't want the same frames as everyone else, or they want multiple pairs and they have different looks. And we need to remember that that's our bread and butter. Um, I do spend a lot of time fitting different contact lenses, whether it's a multifocal toric. We are 98% daily disposable in the office. It took time to get there, but taking the time to fit multifocal lenses. Now, a lot of doctors don't want to take the time to do it, but just charge accordingly. Charge for your chair time. If you feel like it's going to take 6 visits per fit, then charge for 6 visits per fit. If you feel, look at the complexity of the situation and know your what your fee structure should be based upon that.
So, Patricia, I want to zoom in on each one of these things. And you kind of started with contacts. So, I'm going to go to contacts, and then maybe we'll talk about multiple pair or just the brand strategy or the optical strategy that you have. And then we'll go into dry eye. We'll go into some of the other specialties that you mentioned. But let's just start at contact lenses. So, you
Mhm,
mentioned you're 98% daily disposable.
mhm.
Talk about what you were before and how you got to 98%.
Well, I graduated in 2005, so there weren't many daily disposable options at that time, right? So, but I remember, and it was interesting because again, looking at the patient need, I think that's the main thing. We can say we want all the things, but listen to what people are saying. If there's, my patients were saying, I hate cleaning these things. I hate how they get deposits on them. I hate how I have to wear the same lens for 2 weeks. I hate, and my eyes are dry. These lenses are uncomfortable. I can't wear them more than 8 hours. And so, at the time, the only multifocal on the market was the Focus. I think it was called Focus Daily Multifocal. And mind you, the success rate was only 50%.
Mm.
And I just started throwing them on eyes and checking to see what would happen. And so the Alcon rep came in and he said, "Who's fitting these lenses?" Like, it just made this mark. And slowly the sales were increasing. And it was a lens that was maybe going to be discontinued. It wasn't the best optics, right? For considering what we have now, especially. But 50% of the people loved it, and so I had big conversations with Alcon at the time because I said to that they said, well, it's only 50% success rate. Why are you still fitting it? And I said, well, if you think about sales in general, if our opticians felt that way, they would never make a sale. You're going to show that Gucci frame or that Prada frame or that whatever frame, and not everyone's going to spend that much money on a frame. But if you have that mindset of only, 50% are going to buy it, but think about the 50% that you didn't show it to that maybe would have bought it. So again, I charged accordingly with my fees. I said, hey, I have this lens. 50% of the people like it, but it is a daily disposable. So you have a fresh lens every day. Would you like to try it? And if they said yes, I'd say, okay, well, it's X amount of dollars for this fitting fee. I'm going to hold your hand through it. It might not work, but being transparent and talking about the journey, and the patient can decide whether that's something they wanted to do or not, right? And clearly for those who wanted to spend the money, it told me they weren't happy. They were looking for a better solution, and so they knew at the very least that I was going to try. I was going to hold their hand and try. And I think as optometrists, we're so worried about failure. But again, if you say, I'm not sure, but I'm going to hold your hand through it and I'm here for you thick or thin. And so the thing about my office now is patients telling me, Dr. Poma, I can't wait to see what you have that's new. You always have something new. So I've kind of earned this reputation for being this innovator, but also telling them that we're going to proceed with caution because I'm not going to just jump on the next train just because we're going to do some research and diligence about it too. But knowing that if there is something new, if I have a solution, I'm going to offer it, that I'm going to be at the forefront of my profession.
Hmm. So it's interesting, and it kind of answered the question of how you got to daily disposables, or how you got started with it. But now I feel like patients have a lot of choices, and especially with the ability to buy contacts online, right? They're sitting in your chair and they're likely asking their AI assistant, how much are these contact lenses that Dr. Poma just prescribed to me, on the internet? And then they're getting wild answers because many of those, and I think I covered this in an episode once where we kind of we talked about the misperception or kind of the trick that people use on Google to make their products seem cheaper than they
Sure.
really are. And I won't name any brands either, but they start with numbers, and they have a technique that makes it look like the box is at least 20 to 30% cheaper than what the actual retail is. So what's how do you keep that contact lens patient in your office now, and how do you keep them buying daily disposables, if that's and how do you convince a patient that that's where they want to be?
So that's just where I start. When they want to start with a monthly lens or a 2-week lens, I say, okay, well, why don't we trade in your phone for a flip phone? I so and I do it in jest, like, and I laugh just like you did as I say it, but then they're like, "Oh," I'm like, "No one's doing this anymore. This is healthier for your eyes. The optics are better. Like, get on board. Let's go." And of course, if someone doesn't want if they want to be put back to a monthly lens for whatever reason. The funny thing is most of the time they end up coming back and returning them just because with staring at screens all day long, I mean, we do need the hydration of a daily. You just have to believe in it too. You can't feel bad. I'm very passionate about the recommendations I make. So I think that's 90% of it too, is I walk the walk and talk the talk. Like I believe in what I'm saying. It's when the doctors stop making eye contact and they're like, "Yeah, well, it's $1,000." Well, and then they're done, right? They just, you know, I wear daily disposables also, but it's interesting because when I lecture and I ask doctors, what's the lens that they prescribe, they're all talking monthly lenses, and then I go around the room and ask what they're wearing, and they're all wearing the best daily disposable, and I think to myself, well, why are we start at the top and you can always go down. You can always go to a cheaper daily disposable. My staff will sometimes do the breakdowns with solutions and things. But the reality is that the cost is pretty equivalent, with some of the lower end daily disposables. But um back to your question on the combating the number game, right, of why do they choose my office. And I don't have a perfect for purchasing versus online versus AI and all those things. Not every person spends their money in my office, and that's the reality. And sometimes things they are what they are. But we do our best to provide, make it easy, convenience. We try to sell at the door. So I'm not that doctor that makes the patients come back for 17 contact lens checks. Personally speaking, I'm a very busy individual. So I'm one of those be brief, be bright, be gone. I'm going to make a decision quickly. And I let's just get this done. I want to check a box, right? I'm a working mom. I have better things to do, even if I don't want to spend my days off running errands, right? So we allow people, if they feel comfortable with the lenses, you can just purchase today. If there's a problem, you use your trials first. If there's a problem, we'll gladly exchange boxes. So there's a convenience factor there. I also think that, and I hate to say this out loud, but it's a reality in optometry. There are a lot of alliance groups, and there's a lot of competitive purchasing, right? So this group here isn't aligned with this contact lens company, and this one's aligned with this contact lens company. And it used to not matter. You could pick Cooper, Elcon, J&J, and just do the smorgasbord of whatever lens, just pick one, it's fine. And I do think that every company has really good product, but I also think that strategizing within your office and aligning with a portfolio that meets your patient's needs and sticking to that portfolio allows you for better pricing, better, because now that we're in the days of everybody wants to, the strategic partnerships and things. And so there's something to be said about, finding a company that meets your needs, that provides customer service, that'll return boxes, that'll, the rep answers their phone, but also provides really good pricing to you and really good rebates so you can be competitive. So that when that patient does have their phone in hand and then you blow that number, they already have it in, they're already like, nope, I'm not buying here. And then when you have that person at checkout that's very highly trained, mind you, that can have that conversation, and they see that your lenses truly are cheaper.
Okay, hold on. Wait. you just said it, and it's just like your other matter of fact statement. It's like, oh, you just want to flip.
It
I
is
mean,
matter of fact.
that
It's
there's
just fact.
yeah, it's
Let's not
great,
overcomplicate
but
it.
but that's your trick. I was waiting, and
Yeah.
then that's it, right? It's the person at checkout. So what is that person at checkout doing?
Well, it starts at the chair though. It's not just I will sell at the chair also. I'm okay with pressing create that lab order. Because some people, it's like, they love these lenses. It's great. I love this. I'm like, okay, here's your annual supply. And that makes it easy. But sometimes I'll do that and they'll get to checkout and get buyer's remorse just a smidge, or
Mm-hmm.
by the time they get to checkout, they're on their phone, right? But that
Mm-hmm.
checkout, so again, finding a company that'll help train your checkout person so you don't have to do it. And,
Mm.
and they provide whatever it is that your office needs, whether it's a scratch pad with a breakdown or a conversation but that checkout person will say, well, where is it that you wanted to buy your contacts? Well, let me show you how we're better, how we're cheaper, how if you don't like your contacts, we'll help you return them. How, providing customer service and the easy button. Because yes, shopping online is great. I do it all day long, right? But returning those Amazon packages, when I'm doom scrolling at 3 a.m. and then I have to go to Whole Foods and return 17 packages, that is not a good time, right? And then I think to myself, why did I do that? Why did I buy that thing that I didn't need? I already have 4 of it, you know? And so to know that all they have to do is text the office or call and say, it's that we can make it easy for them so they don't have to call the 1-800 number, or they don't have to do it, and having a rep that helps that is priceless. Like knowing that we have their backs from beginning to end, but then you have to deliver on that. You can't make false promises. You have to really, really show the patient that you care, because we're in a world where no one really gives a crap about you anymore. so so finding that is key.
And Patricia, what about the experience in your practice that primes the patient? Is there anything in particular about your practice that makes them kind of that puts them in that in the mode of, hey, I'm going to get my care here, and I'm going to really and like, I don't know, something that focuses on the patient experience. Because hearing you talk, the more I hear you talk, the more I realize that maybe your practice is everyday sort of, for you, but there may be some really unique things that are happening in your practice that prime the patient to make more buying decisions.
I think the first thing that there's so many first things, but one thing that's element that's really important is culture. Having a culture in which you do the best you can to ensure happiness, that they can feel the energy. Patients love coming to our office because everyone has a genuine smile. The
Mm,
joke is that we're a dysfunctional family. So your front desk person, my front desk person, she has, I call it the Janet Jackson smile. She comes in and she's just happy and warm and inviting. And the patients, even if they're grumpy, they just look at her smile and her happiness. It's interesting because this poor woman gets asked out probably 4 times a week, right? Because she's just so warm and inviting. But it is not uncommon to see my staff dancing as they're helping people, and just, creating an ambiance in which people can be themselves and they can feel comfortable in their skin and being who they are, and empowering them to make decisions, and to be part of our culture. I think also gives everyone, and it's not, again, not easy to do. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes getting rid of people that may be amazing in some aspects, but yet still don't fit the vibe. Again, very hard to do because it's really, really tough to find people that want to be, that want to work, that want what we want. But that culture creates a connection with the patients, a comfort,
mhm.
that a trust that we have their best intentions, that we care about them. And so there's a warm energy that comes within our walls, that's very inviting, very inclusive. I have a very diverse staff. So no matter who walks through the door, they're comfortable.
Yeah.
That's
Are
also
are you are you hiring for culture, or are you training culture?
both.
Okay.
Right?
Uh,
Because some people have it right away, and that's great. Some people have potential. And so, and then you say, this is how we do it here. This is how I'd like it. if someone is not that smiling Janet Jackson smile girl, like I can't make you into that. And so maybe you're not the first face when you walk through the door, but maybe you're pleasant in other ways, or you have a skill set that's great in other, but overall we're there for the patients. And so you have the dedication to the patient is that is a deal breaker. If you don't have that, then we're done. But that dedication can look differently amongst different personalities.
Uh, and so uh, you said culture is number one. Is there a number two that's part of the patient experience?
Um, Again, the dedication. We can make mistakes, and we all will make mistakes. And the larger my practice grew, the more mistakes were made, right? Because there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And so maybe someone started something on Tuesday and then they were off on Wednesday and someone tried to complete that task, right? The busier you get, systems can fail. There are things that happen, but it's all about having genuine intent and knowing when to say you're sorry, knowing when to take care of a person, and knowing that you really care about that patient, is that's just as important as the fun loving environment.
Okay. When we come back from break, I want to dig into your specialties. So we're going to talk about, um, we'll start with dry eye and aesthetics, and then see where the conversation goes. We'll be right back on the Power Hour. Hey there, it's Eugene, and I want to let you in on something. So you've been to conferences before. You've come home fired up, and then Monday morning hits, and it's back to the grind. The ideas don't stick. The plan never gets made, and 6 months later, your practice is in the same place. So I know that pain. I've been to those conferences with you, and that is not happening at this new event called I Care Boss Live. You've heard the story of I Care Boss, and now there's an event, I Care Boss Live. It's September 16th through 18th in Cleveland, 2.5 days. We're bringing together 200 of the best practice owners in eye care for a one of a kind event that combines speakers, peer learning, mastermind groups, and industry innovation, all designed around one goal. You leave with a 90-day plan and you can actually execute it and get stuff done. And we're going to tackle some real stuff: exam only rates, revenue per patient, people problems, leadership, AI and technology, specialty growth, the things that keep people up at night. We're going after it. And we're doing it in a room full of practice owners that are just as serious about growth as you are. This is not a conference. It's not a seminar. It's something different. There are only 200 spots. So if you want to be in on this, this is not publicly announced, just on this podcast. Go to thepowerpractice.com, click events, click apply now. This is invite only. It's not for everybody. So you have to apply. We'll ask you a few questions. And if it's a fit, we'll invite you to register. This event, I Care Boss Live, is going to sell out. Do not sit on it. I invite you to apply right now. All right, we're back in the Power Hour with Dr. Patricia Poma. And Patricia, I want to jump into your specialties. You mentioned you are a heavy specialty practice. You talked about kind of your centers of excellence. I don't know that we'll cover all of them, but at the very least, let's touch on one and maybe zoom into your dry eye practice. So how did you build it? What did you try? I like what you said earlier in the episode, which is that, and I've heard this all the time, which is that people kind of buy the machine and then they start trying to use it and like, nobody's buying this, whatever. And then the machine just kind of becomes it becomes a coat rack, a very expensive coat rack in some closet. And you have clearly gone in a different direction. So what I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about is how your dry eye practice came to be, how it evolved into the aesthetic side, and then we'll try to find ways that we can incorporate that into things that everybody can do.
Yes. So there are a lot of coat rack IPLs out there. I've seen a lot of doctors, purchase because that's what everyone's doing without a plan. They just were like, I need an IPL. They expect patients to come in and say, what's that instrument right there? Can you put that on my eye? Because I have dry eye.
Mm-hmm. And can you charge me $2,000 to do that?
Yes. And then, yes, exactly. And I think that comes from the roots of optometry, because I think that patients do that with glasses sometimes, right? They will come in and saying, I need a new pair of glasses. My glasses broke. My glasses are uncomfortable. My lenses are scratched, right? So the mindset of optometry is, yes, we want to sell them 2 pairs, 3 pairs, 6 pairs, maybe a computer pair. But the reality is a lot of times patients come in already with a preconceived notion of like, this is the year I'm getting a pair of glasses, right? But I think medicine has changed. I think that there are some patients that go on TikTok and listen to some influencer talk about, red light therapy or dry eye or that sort of thing. But the reality is that dry eye isn't something, it's something we can live with. Well, some people can, some people can't, right? So that's the problem is dry eye is a spectrum and it can get worse over time. So I am a very big holistic medicine, preventative medicine person. I'm really into fitness and health and that sort of thing. And I'm a root cause kind of person. So when it comes to health, so dry eye is something that if you don't look at those glands and if you don't identify the patients ahead of time, then the process can get progressively worse. And then, and most dry eye patients are being treated when their meibomian glands are at zero. They're atrophied. And you have a dry eye patient that is barely surviving. They're taking, 17 drops a day, doing all the things. And that's when the doctors look at me and say, IPL doesn't work. I've tried it on 4 patients and all of them still had dry eye. And, that's like looking at a chronic cancer patient who's at stage 4 and they're, on death's door and you're trying to get them, vitamins, like so. And I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but I think I want to drive that point in is that we need to look at, and look at the patient's journey and anticipate what their problems may be. So I'll give you another example. I start talking about presbyopia around age 38 because you don't know if that patient's coming back right away, if they're going to come back in a year, 2 years, 4 years. And I say to them, around age 40, your up close is going to start to change. But don't worry about it now. You're okay for now. But I'm just letting you know that I will hold your hand through it. So we proactively screen, every other year we take pictures of the meibomian glands. We have the oculus keratograph. And as part of our eye exam, we screen and we talk about dry eye. We ask those questions. If a patient's on Accutane, we're going to talk about dry eye. We're going to talk about what's going to happen to them, not wait for them to come in and say, my eyes are burning. Don't leave it to the dermatologist to give them drops. You be at the forefront of it and let that patient know what they're going to experience and offer a plan so that they don't have symptoms. Any woman that's, and this is a lot on birth control, perimenopausal or menopausal or postmenopausal, on the computer all day. That's something that just needs to be addressed. And so a lot of people will say, I am fine. No, I don't have a problem. And maybe they don't. But isn't it fair that they should know that they will have a problem soon enough because their glands are starting to atrophy? So step 1 is identifying the patients. Find out, who is out there, be comfortable talking about it, understand what you're talking about, and then go slow. Again, I have all the instruments at my disposal right now, but I started off with fish oil and brooder masks. If you're going to offer supplement though, make sure you understand what you're offering. Do your homework. Do you believe in the natural triglyceride versus the ethyl ester? Do you think it should have GLA? Or are you just going to blink? Is a Costco version okay? Be prepared because some of your patients, again, are very highly educated and they'll say, my other doctor, they said I should take this one. So are you going to be the expert and a leader in dry eye in explaining omega-3s? Are you prepared for a vegetarian version just in case if someone's vegan? Be poignant about the decisions you make and have a little backbone so that you can have discussions about what you're recommending. So our office has omega-3 testing that we do. So when someone is on an or on a fish oil or an omega-3, I'll say, well, that's great. Would you like to test to see if you're buying expensive urine or if that fish oil is actually working? And so they look at me kind of funny. I'm like, well, has anyone ever quantified your omega-3 levels to make sure that you're getting enough for your body? Because the recommendation is 2 grams a day. That's what we all say. Well, if I came into the office, do I need 2 grams? But what if Shaquille O'Neal came in? Does he need 2 grams? I mean, there's a big difference there. So we have a skin poke test and we test omega-3 values. And then if they're not good enough, we have discussions about why I think the omega-3 I recommend is best. Why don't we try this one and see if your numbers change?
Wait, hold on. You just said so much. So, if there, so first of all, we'll back up and talk about the fact that I love that you are future pacing your patients by knowing correlated, essentially, anything that is a correlated or a causal symptom or lifestyle component for them. And then you can say, okay, I expect you to have this symptom. And then immediately they start saying, oh, number one, this person is an expert. Number two, I maybe I will be a little bit more mindful of scratchy, itchy eyes. And oh, yeah, like now that I'm thinking about it, I guess that does kind of happen, just
Tired
simply.
eyes or fluctuating vision, or and again, some people their personality type is, I never have a problem, fine.
Yeah.
That's
But,
okay.
but even on days where I never have a problem, well, my doctor told me to look out for this. So it kind of feels like, maybe it's starting to get a little worse. But okay, fine. So that's one. And then you talked about the skin poke test. I bet that's pretty unique to most practices. So talk a little bit, expand that a little bit more. Do you charge for this? How much do you charge for it? And is it like what patients like really do this a lot?
So, the capture rate's pretty good. I mean, I would say about 75%. It's about $55, I wanna say. We charge the same price. It's available on Amazon also. We have it in the office. The caveat is in my state, we're not allowed to break skin, so the patient has to do it themselves. So they take it home, but we register them. There's not a lot of money in it, as far as, like, revenue, but again, you're looking people start to trust you and your opinions, and because you're putting science behind what you say, and they're like, oh, she really knows what she's talking about. And when they see that their doctor's fish oil or that Costco fish oil is not as good, and then all of a sudden they take ours, then they see their numbers go up. And so again, no, now you've captured that individual, and no matter what recommendation I make, they start to listen. And it's that slow trust. Now, you have to be careful. It's okay to tell someone they don't need a pair of glasses, right? Don't take advantage of that either, because they need to trust you. But when they start to see that what you say and your authority is meaningful, and you can back what you say up, and you have knowledge, I think, so use it. Don't be a know-it-all. Don't use big words. I see some doctors will start talking, in words that I have to find the medical dictionary to look up. Like, just straightforward, everyday jargon. Um, but once they do this testing, again, it's you just do a little skin poke. You fill there's three circles. You fill it with blood. You send it in. The results come in. It tells you in the spectrum what an ideal amount is for that patient, and then you can up their dose or you can change what they're taking, and then you do another follow up if you'd like. Once some patients see that what we offer is good, then we offer a subscription program. So I have a subscription programs of, omega. So they, again, convenience, that they don't have to go to the store, and it also makes them accountable to maybe take their omega-3s every day, because that next shipment is coming, right?
Mhm.
So we keep credit cards on file. You can use a company. Some people use companies for subscriptions. We do it in house. I don't feel the need to pay for someone. I have someone in charge of that. Their credit card numbers are under password lock and key that only one individual has besides myself. And um and then every quarter, the patients, there's a discount involved a little bit, but we ship out hundreds of boxes of omega-3s, so it
Well,
works out
you
very
guys do
well.
it directly from your office.
Direct from the office. Yep.
Do you
Yeah.
make money on it?
Yes. Yeah. It's passive income, so it doesn't matter whether I'm there or not that day. And that's the beauty, and that's how you get more revenue per patient, finding ways in which the office is sustainable, whether you're there or not. Now, I still need to be there sometimes. Um, but, patients need to be seen, but at the same time, finding needs and niches in which you can continue care without the doctor always having to be there. So we, with all our supplements, we have a subscription program in which we can ship them out, and patients are really like it.
So just, because I hear this all the time is like people don't want to talk about supplements because supplements don't make them any money. And I understand if you have a subscription program, well, okay, you're making money, I guess, whatever, 12 times a year or 99 and 4 times a year off of that patient. where they would have bought that from Costco. So like how much, and I don't care about the revenue, I care about the profit. So how much profit drops down to the bottom line from each patient for supplements?
The
Ballpark.
main thing is shipping and time. But there's always time, when we have a slow day or a bunch of people canceled or that sort of thing. I mean, you're paying that employee anyways, right? So as far as like hours and salaries, I'm not worried about that. The shipping can, so we do it, some supplements that we don't make as much on twice a year, versus we don't do monthly or so it's either quarterly or twice a year that they get the 6 month supply. So every little bit kind of counts, right? So even if I make $10 a bottle, but I'm shipping 4 bottles at a time, that's $40. And I'm paying the employee $20 an hour. And then there's some shipping, but at the same time, I am selling hundreds of bottles versus
Well, and
they
you're
they
40
come in by
bucks
onesies, twosies.
and you're 40 bucks times, if that's your net profit, multiply that times 4 quarters. That's an extra $160. What did you make again on selling them a pair of glasses? Right? Like, what was your ultimate net profit on selling a pair of glasses? For most practices, if the revenue per patient's, I don't know, 400 or 500 bucks, that was what they made on the frames, right? And so, like, it's as if you sold them another pair of frames, but profit, right? Like that. That's the so that's one
In
way to
most
possibly
supplements,
think of
I'm
it.
making more than $10 a bottle, right? But I was going on the low end of things. But I was tired of hearing. And so, again, listening to what the patients say and doing something about it, I think it's really critical. So, this all came about with I was having too many patients say to me, I gave them whether it was MacuHealth or an omega 3 or name that supplement. And I said, well, are you still taking that supplement? Well, I bought the bottle from you guys. And then once it was out, I ran out. And I thought to myself, well, I mean, again, most people go on Amazon. Some people are proactive and go on Amazon. Some people are, but at the same time, I have a solution. Let's make it. Or it was snowing, and it's an elderly person that didn't want to get out. Or we go to Florida for the winter, or so they can have it and pack it and use it. So if you have utilization, or if it keeps coming, then they're gonna, it changes the whole thing.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you're solving problems that patients have. Let's talk about your dry eye packages. So when I am a patient in your office, and I did, because you mentioned you're gonna do the liposcan, or you're gonna get imaging my well-being glands, and every other year you mentioned, and then what? So then what is the conversation like in the office? What is the conversation like in clinic? And I mean, I heard that you future paced me, you helped me
Sure.
increased my expectations that this is something we'll be talking about today. But now I'm in your chair. So what is it that you do? Again, trying to help the audience understand how to get to over $1,000 revenue per patient. So what are some of the things that you do that work well for you?
So again, being comfortable with the conversation and guiding the patient to where you want them to go. And it's, again, I always compare to optical. When do you sell a 167 or a 174 versus a polycarbonate versus Trivex? Right? Some patients, and so it's complicated. It depends, right? But yet again, we expect our opticians to make poignant decisions because they look at the prescription and they say, okay, this patient's a minus 12. We're going to go to 174. But what about that minus 3 patient? Are they okay in a 167? When do you do a 167 versus when do you do a polycarbonate lens? Is polycarbonate okay for that patient? It depends on who you talk to, right? Doctors have a really hard time when they have more than one thing to do for dry eye. Do they pick the LipiFlow or the, name that thing? Do they do the LLLT? Do the IPL? And I say, look at the patient, look at their glands, look at their symptoms. Yes, you can present all the packages to them, but push the one that you think, when you look at those glands and their symptoms and other factors, push the one that you really think that they need. There are some people that I look at them and say, listen, I'm not going to take your money for anything less than IPL. These glands are horrific. This is not going to do anything for you. You need the most expensive one. I'm sorry. Just like you're going to tell that minus 17 patient that they need 174 in their glasses. Um, because it's going to hurt their nose and they're not going to see well. And I mean, there's just non-negotiables. Negotiation starts in when you have someone who is either, again, preventative medicine, or the glands aren't that bad, or you're doing, they're not symptomatic with it. So we talk about, I joke around with them. I say, here are your glands. I use the word constipated a lot with glands. I don't use the word atrophy. I say these glands are dying. Again, it's harsh, but patients don't know what atrophy means. They know when you say these are receding and they're slowly dying. Do you see how this is empty? Right? No one likes that word. It's a strong word, but when they see the image, it's powerful,
Hmm.
and they want to see their images later. Or I say they're empty, and so I tell them, I said, here you have a bunch of options. One is you can do nothing, and that's always an option. And I will be here for you if you choose nothing, but I'd rather you not choose nothing. Option, the lowest is the minimum that you're going to do is omega-3s and a brooder mask. Then I say there's 2 other levels that are not covered by insurance. And I said, I am so sorry. Unfortunately, because they're in and I make a negative a positive. I say these 2 procedures I'm going to tell you about have aesthetic qualities, or they're used in a lot of spas for anti-aging. And I said, so the good news is your side effect is anti-aging. The bad news is that because of that, insurance will not cover it. So we talk about LLLT and we talk about IPL. Some people are like, nope, I want the best. Give me that one. Some people, Hum and Han, I'm like, okay, well, why don't we start with the omega-3s and the mask, and I'll see you back in 6 weeks and let's see how you're feeling. And if they're not feeling better, if their glands don't get better, if they're non-compliant, then we do a dry eye workup and we talk about the LLLT and the IPL again. Um,
When
and
you
you're
when you see them in 6 weeks, Patricia, is that a medical visit? Is that
It's a
a
medical visit, absolutely. We do a medical visit. We bill for, the screening photos. We do, the Keratograph has this whole program of tests that you can do. And you don't necessarily need all that either. You can do, there's so much T-butt on your own. You can do Shermer's, you can do, whatever it is that you need for those practices that maybe can't afford some of these gadgets that I have. But at the same time, and some of these people don't show, or they don't come back, and they come back in a year and then want to talk about it in a year. It's their journey. Again, back to what I was saying earlier, your capture rate's not always going to be that good, but you're planting seeds and educating. And then as these people live life and realize that, hey, maybe she was right, or maybe she was wrong, maybe I don't care. But then a lot of times they'll come back either in 6 weeks, a week later, a year later, whatever that looks like for them. You did plant a seed, and that seed will germinate sometimes even 3 years later. That happens with all the specialties. You might not win right away. The myopic patient might wait 2 more years for the patient to, maybe there's a certain number they're looking for. Or the VT patient might be when their kid gets headaches. You make recommendations and or maybe they have to save money for it. That happens a lot too.
do you find that there's a when you talk to patients, is there a mechanism that you use to track that conversation's been had? Is there some follow-up that you do? And do you find that there's somebody else in your practice that needs to say it again, whether it's like a counselor or like that same highly trained checkout person? How do you manage you did the recommendation in the chair and then there's something that happens afterwards?
Yeah, and I think this is really key to have what I call them an ambassador for each specialty. So a
Mm.
go-to person. Um, what I noticed in the practice is that the more specialized we became, I'll give you an example. Even as an optometrist, I don't do everything. You can't be jack of all trades because you're, master of none. So what I specialize in my office is vision therapy, dry eye, and ortho K, right? I have others that do glaucoma and mac degen. I have others that do scleral lenses, and I refer within my office because I can't stay up to date on the latest of everything and all the things. So I can't expect my staff to be good at everything also. And I want to make sure that we are the experts in what the patient is looking for. So after and let's be honest, I also don't have all the time in the world to talk in great detail about a lot of these things. I'll plant the seed And then I find what I call as my ambassador, my dry eye ambassador, my vision therapy ambassador, whoever that my contact lens ambassador that talks about, prior authorizations for sclerals and all those things for billing. And, so I go to that go-to person who has the time, whether it's that day or they do a follow-up call to talk about all the questions. So maybe they talk about more about the omega-3 testing. Maybe they talk about, the side effects of IPL. They go through the checklist on the do's and don'ts when you do it, what medications you shouldn't be taking. Don't get a vampire facial 5 minutes before your IPL, right? So you have that expert within your office. And what's really cool about that is that it gives back to the culture piece, going full circle, is that it empowers your staff to feel like they're a part of things, that it becomes a career and not a job. When they specialize and see purpose within their job, then they're happy. They feel an importance and a belonging in part of the community and culture, that they are the expert in something, that patients look for them and say, and I'll give you an example, Carrie. Is Carrie here today? I have one more question about, and it's funny because I'm walking by and they're asking me where Carrie is because they're going to ask her the question. And that's awesome because guess what? I don't want to talk to you anyways. I have to go. So it's really good when you have these mini experts that are just as passionate as you are and are able to seal the deal and educate and do all the things that you don't have time for.
Yeah. And I mean, and it sounds like, and you have different ambassadors for each of the specialties in your practice.
Yes. Yes.
So there's somebody
Absolutely.
who's in charge of myopia, there's somebody who's in charge of VT, there's somebody who's in charge of, and those people are kind of the local specialists for that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And we have the backups too, because sometimes that person's on vacation or they're sick or maybe they actually quit. It happens. Maybe someone steals them for their expertise and offers them $5 an hour more because they're already trained and ready to go, which happens.
hmm Um, that you mentioned aesthetics and you kind of talked about the aesthetic upside, I guess, of the dry eye treatment. But I know that you have some patients that are like dedicated aesthetic patients. So how does that happen? And is it usually the path is I do some dry eye and then I like the aesthetic effects, and so I come in for aesthetic related services. What services do you offer, and how do patients find out about them? How do they get started?
Well, it varies from state to state, first and foremost. Again, doctors need to know what they're allowed to do in their state. I don't have much wiggle room in my state to do. I'm allowed to treat around the eyes. I have some justification for a full face because, to keep things nice and even. But other than that, so, outside of, maybe getting a medical, I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but, an MD to sign off on all the things and an esthetician and somebody, working off of their license, you know, keeping it simple in my office. I didn't want all that headache. I'll be honest. And I didn't want to I still wanted to maintain my medical reputation because I work so hard to be able to bill medical insurances. And I'll be honest, I went to the dentist once and here I am to get my teeth clean. And he's like, pulling on my face and telling me, we could do Botox here and there. And I was like, I'm not here for this. I also think that, it's important to not lose sight of understanding again what that patient need is. So we put posters up in every exam lane and throughout the office of befores and afters. I don't want to offend anyone and saying, "Hey, I can make you look a little better," um, but this way the patient will ask, "What is that?" I'll say, "Well, any questions?" And I'm thinking we're going to talk about glasses or macular degeneration, and they're like, "What's that?" And so that gives me an in to talk to them about it. What I'm finding with optometrists, though, again, is they're all purchasing these aesthetic instruments that cost over $200,000 a piece. And they're purchasing, and I was at a conference with this doctor who's probably like 55. And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to get one of these because patients are going to want it." And I said, "Okay, well, how are you going to present this? What are you going to do?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I'm not comfortable. I don't know anything about face skin and all those things." And I said, "Well, then who's going to present it?" He said, "You need to find someone who's either a key staff person that's going to do that legwork for you." He's like, "Well, I'm just going to hire an associate doctor." a young female that'll do that for me. And I said, well, do you have that person in mind? He said, no, I'm just going to buy the instrument and then I'm going to figure it out. And I stopped him. And I think that the company that I am a KOL for wasn't really happy about this, but I was like, hey, get your plan first. Figure out if there's a patient base. Find out who's passionate about it. Find out who's going to do it, and then and have your packages ready to go, your pricing ready to go, what you're going to say, what your script looks like, and then purchase. Because then it becomes that coat rack, and then you have ill will against that company. You see it all the time on Facebook and all our little forums. You know,
Yeah.
I hate them because I purchased this instrument and it's worth nothing, but they didn't plan for it. So, be prepared for things like, how long is this going to last? If you can't answer that question, then you have no business doing aesthetics. Be
Yeah.
prepared for the worst. Be prepared for what happens if you burn a patient. What is your protocol? Again, because what's happening is doctors are buying it and they have zero confidence. All a patient has to do is ask one question that's not on the script, and the doctors falter. Do you understand the aging process? Do you understand inflammation? Do you understand what it takes to combat that? The answer is no. In anything with an optometry, know what you're doing, just like you do with a contact lens. If a patient sleeps in their contact lens and they have an ulceration, what do? You have that plan. You have your plan A, plan B, plan C if something happens, right? Have those same plans and have your vision of what could go wrong, what could they ask, what could, and be prepared and have those scripts ready for your ambassador and for your staff and for yourself even.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense is that if you go into anything without making a plan, your results are likely to be subpar because you're likely to get distracted. You're likely to have a commitment phobia, and you're also likely to give up at the first sign of failure, right? Like or you're likely to at least put it to the side. If you, in the process of making a plan, you're basically anticipating everything that could go wrong. And so you're more prepared for that mentally, even if you go through that process for a short period of time. One thing I was talking to a doctor who kind of was in a similar situation, and he was looking to bring in to bring in a piece of equipment, and we were talking about it, and I said, why don't you just talk to like three people that who have this particular equipment, and why don't you ask them what mistakes they wish they didn't make upfront, because I bet you that's going to help you go a lot faster. And hearing it from other people, you can hear it from me, but like if you hear it from other people who have made those mistakes, I think you'll be far better off. And just make a couple of calls and invest the half hour so that you don't have to, or half hour times three maybe, so that you don't have to worry about $80,000, getting old, aging, and then frustrating you, because that capital could have been deployed in a completely different way if that solution wasn't for you.
Sure. And hopefully you find someone who's transparent and will tell you, right? Like, and that's, will tell you what the mistakes they made, because that's the thing is finding your community, finding a community to belong, that you can be trusted. You can trust those people and they trust you and you learn from one another. I think we're beginning to, I'm seeing all these trade shows and how the attendance is low, and we're starting to lose a little bit of that. CEs online, people don't like to go to meetings anymore, dinners and all the things. And I think finding that those people is, that you can bounce ideas off of is really important. Um, um, Also, a lot of the experts, and I use it lightly, experts online that claim to be dry eye experts, um, aren't treating dry eye. The reality is that they, maybe if they do one IPL a week, but they're talking about it like they know what they're doing, but really maybe shadow someone that really is doing a lot of dry eye and aesthetics. Um, we have a whole schedule just for dry eye. I mean, my dry eye coordinator is doing procedure. She's doing the Oculift procedure. She's doing LipiFlow. She's doing LLTs. She has her own schedule. So each doctor has a schedule and she has a schedule of things lined up, so you can hear those conversations and you can see those things. But I do think that asking people and taking things with a grain of salt is also important, because there are a lot of people, and asking for full disclosure too. Who do you work for? Because everyone's, and I love that some forums require that, full disclosure. Who do you, who's paying your bills?
Mhm.
because I think
Yeah.
that's important too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I say it's conversations with people you trust, not like a comment on in some sort of forum or group. Patricia, we unfortunately we're at the end of the episode. There's so many more things I have to ask you, but it will probably have to be in a future episode. Thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom, and also thank you for helping people understand that $1,000 or more per patient is possible, and it's possible not overnight, but with this kind of transitional mindset of going from where you are today to where you want to be, and the idea of working on culture, but also the idea of being transparent but direct with your patients and not being afraid to sell. It sounds like all of these are core levers that you pull on every single day to make your practice successful. So thank you so much for joining me on the Power Hour. It's been a really fun conversation.
Thank you. It was fun.